There are places on Earth where time seems to stand still, where the wind whistles across open dunes, carrying nothing but dust, heat, and the memory of what used to be. For decades, one of those places was the Kubuqi Desert, the seventh largest sea of sand in China, stretching across Inner Mongolia. Locals called it a gate of death. Farmers fled it, roads avoided it, and every year the desert crept several meters closer to the villages along its edge. The government tried to stop it with charity, subsidies, and ambitious but short-lived green campaigns, but the dunes kept moving, swallowing fields, homes, and hopes. By the early 1980s, experts labeled the Kubuqi irreversible. But in the middle of this hopelessness, one man, a truck driver turned entrepreneur, made a wild claim. A desert is not a burden, it is a resource, and if you build the right economy, the sand will pay you to plant trees. That man was Wang Wenbiao. His success later made people call him the Desert King. And what followed was not just ecological restoration, it was a complete reinvention. A closed-loop, market-driven green economy powered by rabbits, willow forests, solar energy, and a unique philosophy turned one of China's most damaged landscapes into one of its most profitable environmental success stories. Today, the Kubuqi is home to 300 million willow trees, 4.5 million Rex rabbits, and one of the world's most visually stunning solar farms. The Junma Solar Power Station is shaped like a galloping horse and generates 2.3 billion kilowatt-hours a year, enough to power 400,000 people. This incredible task was completed not with good intentions, charity, or government subsidies, but with incentive. Most importantly, it was not the work of a single technology, but of a closed-loop model now referenced by the United Nations as one of the world's most successful anti-desertification projects. Welcome to the Kubuqi miracle and the man who engineered it. To understand why the Kubuqi transformation matters, we need to understand what it once was. For centuries, the Kubuqi Desert was not just barren, it was expanding rapidly, and frankly, it was happening faster than any government program could stop. Every summer, sandstorms rolled across northern China, covering cities, clogging rivers, and damaging nearly everything in their path. The desert's expansion displaced hundreds of thousands of people across the 20th century. Villagers described it as a living monster, eating their pasture, killing their livestock, and pushing them deeper into poverty. By the 1980s, 70% of the region's farmland was lost. Wind speeds reached levels strong enough to pull roofs off houses. At its peak, the Kubuqi sent sandstorms all the way to Beijing. China issued directives, funded tree planting campaigns, launched community planting days. But here is the truth. Charity is not enough to stop a moving desert. If you doubt this, we can tell you why. Planting a tree is easy. However, watering it for 10 years is not. Farmers struggled to maintain the saplings. Roads were too sandy to transfer water. Livelihoods were unstable. Volunteers planted millions of trees, but only a fraction survived. Deserts do not respond to effort. They respond to systems. And that is where our story begins. Before he was the Desert King, Wang Wenbiao was a truck driver. Every day he delivered salt from one outpost to another, crossing the Kubuqi Desert. It was an exhausting and dangerous journey. The road was so sandy that trucks sank. Sandstorms blocked visibility, and whenever storms hit, workers were trapped for days. Wang once said, "I spent half my income rescuing trucks buried by sand." As he rose through the local business world, eventually becoming the head of a salt company later known as Ilion Resources Group, he faced a reality no company could escape. If Kubuqi continued expanding, his business and entire villages would disappear. So Wang proposed what many considered insane, but a long-term plan to green the desert while creating profit. His idea was simple but revolutionary. Instead of treating the desert as a natural disaster, treat it as a market. Create products that thrive in sand. Use those products to fund more restoration and make the entire system circular. A closed loop where every element supports the next. But Wang faced three major problems. The soil could not hold water. People were too poor to maintain new industries. Trees alone were not enough to stop the dunes. To fix all three problems, he needed a biological engine. It had to be cheap, scalable, profitable, and capable of transforming sand into soil. He found that engine in the form of a rabbit. When you think of desert restoration, you probably don't think of rabbits, especially not Rex rabbits, a breed known globally for their dense fur and high reproduction rate. But Wang Wenbiao did. His logic was brilliantly simple when you think about it. If you want plants, you need fertilizer. If you want fertilizer, you need animals. If you want animals, you need a market. Enter the Rex rabbit. They were able to produce valuable fur, meat, and most importantly, nutrient-rich manure for the badly damaged soil. Manure became a resource the project could use. Wang began teaching villagers how to raise small rabbit herds. The rabbits lived in controlled, fenced environments. They didn't roam freely like the Australian rabbit plague. Every part of the system was measured, monitored, and designed for stability. Villagers sold rabbit fur and meat for steady incomes, often earning the equivalent of $12,000 to $16,000 per year. It may not mean much to you in the West, but it was a huge improvement over the previous poverty levels. In return, Elian used the manure to fertilize desert soils. What was once dead sand slowly regained organic matter. The soil darkened, clumps formed, and its moisture began to stay longer. The desert wasn't healing yet, but it was softening. Most importantly, the rabbits created a profit loop. Profit leads to incentive. Incentive leads to labor. Labor leads to greenery. Greenery leads back to profit. It was ecology powered by economics, and it was only half the plan. For the next phase, the project needed a plant tough enough to survive the desert, but useful enough to justify the effort. The team selected willows. But it was not just any willows. It was those varieties capable of sending roots down nearly 300 feet, tapping groundwater and creating natural wind barriers. Over several decades, the project planted 300 million willows, creating a vast green network that held the sands in place. The results surpassed expectations. Wind speeds dropped by nearly 90% in the forested zones. Groundwater levels rose by 5 to 6.5 feet over 20 years. Local temperature swings became milder. Rainfall increased as vegetation restored the microclimate. The desert's death spiral reversed. And yet, even that wasn't enough. Because willows and rabbits alone don't build a regional economy. For that, Wang needed something scalable on a national level. Something clean, modern, and high-tech. A symbol of the new ecological economy. Something big enough to make the world pay attention. If you travel across Kubuqi today, you will find something breathtaking. It is not a forest, not a village, but a giant galloping horse made of solar panels. This is the Junma Solar Power Station, located in Dalad Banner. Junma means galloping horse. From the ground, it looks like endless rows of dark blue panels. From above, it looks like a piece of art, a massive desert spanning horse in full stride. The numbers are staggering. There are 196,000 solar panels, which generate 2.3 billion kilowatt-hours of electricity per year. That is enough to power 400,000 residents. The installation is recognized by Guinness as an example of large-scale solar design built using agrophotovoltaics, which means animals and crops grow underneath the panels. And that last detail is key. Under the shade of the panels, grasses thrive. Livestock graze, soil stays moist, wind slows. The panels themselves reduce sandstorms by 50% around the installation. The solar farm is not just energy, it is another link in the closed-loop system. Energy revenue funds restoration. Restoration improves soil, and improved soil boosts agriculture. Agriculture supports the solar workforce, and the entire local economy strengthens. This is ecological capitalism. But what made the Kubuqi model world famous was not the individual pieces. It was how perfectly they fit together. The model functions like a biological machine. Every output becomes an input, and every waste product becomes fuel for the next step. Here is how the loop works. First, Solar panels generate revenue that funds desert restoration, community projects, and salaries. Second, solar farms create shade. That shade grows grass and grazing opportunities. Then grass supports livestock and rabbits, and in turn, animals produce manure. Overall, the manure enriches the soil, and soil supports willow tree survival. In addition, willow forests stop desertification, reduce sandstorms, improve climate, and strengthen agriculture. Lastly, healthier ecosystems increase land value and tourism, creating new income streams. And round it goes. Between 2010 and 2020, the Kubuqi region generated over $10 billion in ecological economic value. And that economic engine is the real miracle, because when people profit from restoration, they protect it. We all have seen over the years that no large-scale project is free of criticism, and the Kubuqi model is no exception. Some scholars argue that Alien Resources Group benefited disproportionately. Others claim that local participation varied across different regions. Critics note that the project's early stages involved strong government alignment, and some environmentalists question the long-term ecological resilience. But here is the important nuance. While the project is not perfect, it is undeniably successful in measurable outcomes. For instance, we saw massive wind reduction, millions of trees planted, rising groundwater, increased biodiversity, significant poverty alleviation, and stabilized dunes. Overall, it has become a thriving green energy sector. Whether one calls it a miracle, a business model, or a carefully curated showpiece, the desert did grow back. And that alone places Kubuqi at the center of global environmental discussions. In a time when desertification threatens 2 billion people worldwide, the Kubuqi model has attracted global attention. The United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification has repeatedly highlighted the project as a model of market-led restoration. Delegations from Africa, the Middle East, Central Asia, and Latin America visit regularly, studying how similar systems might work in their own regions. And here is the key lesson they take home. First, environmental protection succeeds when local people benefit. Secondly, when trees are profitable, trees survive. The world does not just need more tree planting campaigns, it needs economic ecosystems that make restoration self-sustaining. Kubuqi did not just fix the land, it fixed the incentives. Every documentary has its hero. In this story, that hero is not the rabbit or the willow or even the solar farm. It is the idea. The radical belief that a desert can be rebuilt using profit, biology, and persistence. Wang Wenbiao once said, "If we treat the desert as an enemy, we lose. But if we treat it as a partner, it becomes generous." 40 years later, his words echo across a landscape no longer defined by sand, but by vegetation, electricity, and economic hope. Kubuqi stands today not as a wasteland, but as a blueprint. A living demonstration that climate solutions do not have to be charity. They can be industries, they can be livelihoods, and they can be a form of art, innovation, and community. And when done right, they can turn the most hopeless environment into the most powerful symbol of human ingenuity. The Kubuqi Desert was once a graveyard of sand. It is now one of the world's leading examples of ecological capitalism. These include rabbits, willows, and solar farms like galloping horses across the desert floor, a closed-loop economy that healed land and lifted people out of poverty, and a reminder that the solutions to our biggest environmental challenges may come from the most unexpected combinations. Deserts are growing around the world, but so is human creativity. And if the Kubuqi can rise again, maybe everything else can too. If you enjoyed this in-depth conversation about one of the world's most successful desert restoration programs, please like the video and subscribe to this channel for more detailed videos like this one. Don't forget to hit the notification icon after watching.